The Dodgers might be making a trade with the Yankees. We know some details, but we don't know all the details. So we'll guess at what the details are. Yoshinobu Yamamoto will be in Los Angeles. Teams are starting to meet with him. The Dodgers will be one of those teams. What is it going to take to get him? And do the Dodgers have an advantage? And lastly, Bob Nightengale kind of went scorched earth on baseball media after the Ohtani stuff. Coming from him, it's kind of funny, but he's been good with all this stuff the last couple months. So we'll get into his comments and kind of how everything played out. That's what's on tap. So let's get locked on Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. It's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. This is the daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And if you want to become an everydayer, all you have to do is listen or watch every day. The easiest way to do that is to subscribe wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, and you'll be notified when our episodes are ready for you. If you were a subscriber, you might have noticed that you got a notification over the weekend, which is something that usually doesn't happen. And that's because the Dodgers got Shohei Ohtani. If you missed that news, that did happen. But yeah, extra episode for you guys. If this is your first time listening or watching, or if you're new from watching from that Ohtani episode, I'm Samperio, joined by my co-host Jeff Snider, and we're both lifelong Dodger fans that have covered the team in the past, continue to cover the team through this podcast. We've done a lot of different things around baseball and the Dodgers specifically, and now we're bringing that here to you every Monday through Friday. And trying to give you content as knowledgeable as possible and sometimes as rational as possible, sometimes not. And that's what we're here to do today. Again, the big news from the weekend, as we talked about, is that Shohei Ohtani is a Dodger. Jeff, have you come down from the cloud nine yet?
Yeah, I'm probably not on cloud nine anymore. I'm still really, really excited about it. One of my favorite things living here in Utah, where you live, pretty much everybody's Dodger fans. Up here, there's a handful of us, but like most people who know me, I am their token Dodger fan, And so going to church today, it was like everybody come up to me as if I did anything, and so it reminded me.
We put out an episode.
That's true. And I mean, we talked him into it on Friday's episode for sure. But so that's a lot of fun, celebrating with, people who just like, I'm their Dodger fan, so I'm the person they want to talk to about it. So that was a lot of fun. But yeah, it's probably not cloud nine anymore, but still pretty darn excited about it.
Yeah. And cloud nine is probably down from that except I still get joy from reading some of these tweets from opposing fan bases. I'm still getting joy out of that. Not engaging, but just enjoying. But yeah, so we got news on Sunday morning, kind of news that the Dodgers and Yankees were working on a trade for the Dodgers to clear up a couple 40-man roster spots. At the end of all the reporting from a couple different people, we essentially got that it's going to be a back of the
end of the roster pitcher.
Yeah, end of the roster. There it goes. End of the roster pitcher and a prospect, and then the Dodgers would be getting a prospect from the Yankees that's currently not on their 40-man roster. So that kind of stayed that way this whole day. So maybe, going through medicals or going through, whatever process they're going through, and we haven't got details yet. But it leaves us to kind of see what we think or who we think those people are going to be. So let's get down into it.
Yeah, assuming that, like, I feel like it's not going to be any of the big names among Dodger prospects, simply because the Dodgers have big trades still to make. And so I don't think we're seeing Michael Busch or Miguel Vargas in this trade, unless it ends up being a much higher profile Yankees prospect than we're thinking of. But most if I had to guess, my guess would be Yorbit Vivas as the prospect and say Gus Varland as the pitcher. But you can replace Gus Varland's name with anybody from Brian Hudson to Victor Gonzalez to, a handful of other guys, and it wouldn't shock me. But Gus Varland, seems like he makes sense to me. He's got good stuff. It seems like the kind of guy that the Yankees might be going after for helping their bullpen. But that's my guess. Yorby Vivas and Gus Varland.
Yeah, Vivas is the one that comes to mind just because he is probably the one prospect on the 40-man that I wouldn't mind trading. I know some people like him, but he was one of those that got added to the 40-man. Probably, he got added to the 40-man, then they didn't have a Rule 5 draft that year, so they wouldn't have needed to that year. And the other guy that also got added that offseason, he was designated for assignment or traded. So Eddie's Leonard. So yeah, for that it makes sense. My only thing is if it goes deeper, like it's one of those chess level trades where maybe the Dodgers know that another team wants one of the Yankees top prospects. So, and they don't want maybe one of the Dodgers top prospects. So they swap top prospects and then use that person for another trade, which is possible. The Yankees have traded away a lot of pitchers and lost a few pitchers to the Rule 5 draft. They still have, some top prospects. They got mainly outfielders, one pitcher up in their top 5 and then an infielder. So, and one of those in the top 5 is Jason Dominguez, who's not going to be traded, and he's coming off Tommy John surgery. So, unless it's one of those guys like Spencer Jones, Everson Pereira, Chase Hampton, George Lombard Jr., I don't think, I think it's just going to be kind of one of those lower tier trades where, Yorby Vivas, Gus Varland, if it goes really, really like lower, then it's, Victor Gonzalez, Brian Hudson, which, unless the Yankees see something in one of those guys, I don't know why it would make sense to go for one of those guys who might get DFA'd anyways. But so that's why it makes me feel like it's someone that wouldn't have got DFA'd normally.
Yeah. I had the same thought as far as if they were trying to do some, next level dealing. We know that the Dodgers are interested in Tyler Glasnow. The Rays are in the same division as the Yankees, so there could be somebody who maybe the Yankees would be more willing to trade to the Dodgers than they would to the Rays. So, that could be a way for the Rays to get somebody they want from the Yankees. But I think most likely, usually Occam's razor tells us that this is going to be two people that we will not care about the Dodgers trading away for a prospect whose name we aren't familiar with. That's my guess.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, the fact that it is going to be a trade is a smart thing on the Dodgers. Like I said, DFA would have been easily enough. There's definitely two guys on there that you could lose or give up the prospect of losing and not really worry about it. But hey, if you can get a prospect out of it and you're not giving up someone, big and another flyer of someone that's not on the 40-man roster that maybe has a year or two or maybe more before they have to get added to a 40-man, makes sense to do it. And I would imagine maybe not by the time you're listening, but by some point tomorrow, we'll have the details of that trade. And then tomorrow we'll be able to talk about that and discuss who it was and if we were right or if we were way off.
And most importantly, once that trade is done, then the Dodgers can actually make the Shohei Ohtani news official, have a press conference. We can get the details of the deferrals and everything. We did have a listener email asking for more specifics on how the deferrals help the luxury tax. And we decided we're going to wait until we actually know the actual numbers. And then we promise we will break down all of the math of exactly what it means for the luxury tax and why it's such a smart move. But that it'll make more sense to talk about that once we actually know the specific numbers.
Yeah. Everson Pereira's on the 40-man, so I don't want someone to call me out for that. But other than that, the other guys weren't. So there's more to get into, obviously, on this once we kind of find out the details. And like you said, there'll be, we can make the Ohtani trade or the Ohtani signing official. We can get all the cool videos and whatnot from the Dodgers social media team, and then we can anticipate when that press conference will be and hear from Ohtani for the first time since like August. So that'll be fun. All right. There is, the Dodgers have more to do, and one of those things is starting pitching. You mentioned Tyler Glasnow. They've been mentioned from him a few times, even in the last couple of days as, trade talks are ongoing or intensifying, whatever the wording they use. But there's a free agent that's available, and someone else that might make big money. But the Dodgers are definitely in the mix with the two other New York teams and a handful of other teams. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, he's back from Japan. He's going to be meeting with teams. Yankees brass is heading over. I think they're meeting with him on Monday. I'm sure the Dodgers will get in at one point, and we'll talk about him and kind of what we're looking at when it comes to signing him. Do the Dodgers have an advantage? All that kind of stuff. So that's what's coming up. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. A moneyline bet is simply a bet between you pick the winner between two teams, and boom, if that team wins and you put at least $5 on it, you'll get $150 of money to put on other bets. Other bets involving spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. I'm a Raider fan. If you would have bet the under on the Raider game on Sunday, you would have won rather easily because there was only 3 points scored in that entire game. So there's a lot to get into when it comes to football, and why not do it with FanDuel? Because they're America's #1 sportsbook, and it's easy to get in on the action. So go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making some money. Kick off your NFL season with FanDuel. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube, and become an everydayer by listening or watching every day. Remember, we are Locked On, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Locked On Podcast Network has also launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On and the national shows covering every league. So Locked On Sports Today on YouTube, and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, Jeff. So Yamamoto is our next topic, probably the next, one of the next dominoes to fall in baseball. Maybe not specifically for the Dodgers, but obviously that he is in the mix for them. We know that the two New York teams and the Dodgers have kind of been named the favorites by a lot of baseball reporters and analysts. We know that there's a lot of other teams that may be involved. We know now that, or we don't know, but the guess is that his number could rise to about $300 million with posting fees and everything in order to sign him. But the Dodgers have Shohei Ohtani now. Does that give them a little bit of advantage when it comes to Yamamoto, knowing that he's open to playing with another Japanese player?
Yeah, I don't gamble, but if I were a gambling man, I think I would put money on the Dodgers signing Yamamoto. I think signing Ohtani makes it significantly more likely that they will sign Yamamoto because they have gone all in. Getting Ohtani, it's like there's no point, not no point, but you don't get the top free agent if you aren't really, really going for it. And with the deferrals, knowing that it's helping them financially, it just wouldn't make sense for them to not have their next move be to be very, very aggressive on Yamamoto. So if they're being very, very aggressive, knowing that he grew up liking the Dodgers, he playing with Ohtani, everything we know says the Dodgers are the right answer for him. And like I said over the weekend, I know that's greedy and selfish, and I'm okay with that. We should all be greedy and selfish when it comes to our favorite baseball teams. We should all want all the best players on our team. And but I really do think it makes sense for the Dodgers to sign Yamamoto. I think it makes sense for both sides. And it's hard to see the Dodgers letting even $30 million get in the way of that. Most off seasons, the Dodgers stand firm on a number and will sometimes get outbid, but with the unique nature of Yamamoto being only 25 years old, they should be willing to go a little bit longer term contract than they might have been otherwise. Everything about Yamamoto screams a guy that the Dodgers should be signing this offseason.
Yeah, I think, some of the reports have said that the Dodgers maybe believe that since he did grow up a Dodger fan, that gives him the advantage that, maybe they don't have to be the highest bid, but as long as they're in kind of the ballpark of everybody else's bids, and that might, help. That might get him to choose them. Now, obviously, Yamamoto being a young guy, we haven't had a player like this in a while come over from Japan. When Ohtani came over, he was going to cost the same for everybody. It wasn't a matter of who, couldn't offer him the most money, anything like that. And then before that, a lot of the players, maybe Daisuke was the last one that had like this kind of hype, I think, right? Because even Darvish was a little bit older, I want to say, when he came over. So, yeah, I mean, they haven't had someone like this in a while. And for everything that's gone on in baseball, it's a little bit of a unique situation, bidding on somebody that hasn't pitched in the major leagues and has faced major league hitters before, but hasn't pitched in the major leagues on a daily basis. The size, it seems that the concern about his size has kind of gone away because, like we said, the money's starting to climb in terms of what people are thinking what he's going to get. But yeah, for the Dodgers, I mean, like I said, you've opened the door on this window. You have at least 4 years where you're expecting Mookie to be, a MVP candidate. You're expecting Freddie Freeman to be an MVP candidate. And now you're expecting Ohtani to be an MVP candidate. And, with their deferrals, I mean, Mookie Betts' number against the AAV is only 25 mil. Ohtani's might be 30 to 40 mil after all his deferrals. Freddie's not, up in that same general area where it's not too bad. So where you have the flexibility to go out there and get a guy who's going to anchor your rotation for a while. And, the Dodgers had that in Clayton Kershaw for a long time. And, they extended him and, they never had to go out and sign him, but they did sign Zach Greinke. And, those two guys were the two-headed monster for a while, but they haven't had to go out and get someone that was going to anchor their rotation for a while. And now's a chance to do it. And, when it comes down to it, if you're going to pay, Blake Snell or somebody 25, 30 million a year, or you can pay Yamamoto 30, 35 mil, I think you take the chance with Yamamoto.
Yeah, I think so too. And when people are talking about 300 million, there's always that, including the posting fee. And, $250 million deal for Yamamoto, the posting fee would be close to that 50 million to make up that. So really, we're not talking about significantly bigger numbers than we had been talking about. After Aaron Nola got whatever he got, 185, is that what he ended up at? Somewhere around there.
170, 180, yeah.
Almost 200 anyway. And I said then, well, Yamamoto's probably getting 220 or 230. And so 250 is really not, and 250 would be the amount that, the posting fee doesn't count against the luxury tax. So, if it's 8 years, 250 million bucks, that's about just over 30 million bucks a year, 31 whatever million bucks a year. That's kind of what I expect, somewhere in that ballpark. And it's hard to see the Dodgers letting that number scare them off. And maybe Ohtani inspired Yamamoto and he'll want to do some deferred money too and help out the luxury tax.
Yeah, that's very possible. It's one of those things where you see it sometimes in other sports, mainly NBA, where like players ring chase, and it's a little bit easier in the NBA because in the NBA you kind of know who's going to be in the finals, conference finals at the very least. It's usually not a big surprise. Every so often you have random, but baseball, it's the parity's there. Like, they haven't had back-to-back winners in a while. And, the Giants won 3 and 5 or that one, 1 point. But, the other 2 years they didn't make the playoffs, or they barely made the playoffs the other year. So,
and they're a wild card. Well, that wasn't even really a dynasty. That was more of a fluke than anything.
Yeah. So I think, if guys want to come over and start taking deferrals, the Dodgers will defer right now all day because they can go for the wins right now, take advantage of it. And then, cross that bridge later, and it's not going to be, life-changing money on the back end of some of these deals anyways. And, you're going to pay for it in the front half of this. And, we've talked about before, like, jersey patch sponsors. Like, imagine the Dodgers have Ohtani and Yamamoto, like a jersey patch sponsor that they get from a company in Japan would probably be some excessive money that they weren't necessarily expecting from before. So there's a lot of sources there, and I don't think the money's a big deal anymore at this point because, like I said, you're in, and you're not into like the fact that you're paying Xander Bogaerts for like 10 more years, or like somebody like, not to bag on the Padres, but like someone like that, to where you don't know what you're going to get, and it didn't work out in year one, and now you really need it to work out in the next couple of years, or else you might find yourself in a tough situation. I think here it works out to where they're getting players that they expect to be good for a long time, but also supplementing that the way they've been doing with young talent. And it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out, because at the end of the day, Steve Cohen's in the mix, and he's somebody that is not afraid to spend money either. I think I saw the other day that his net worth has gone up since he took over the Mets, so he has even more money to play with.
Yeah, it's when we talk about the Dodgers and deferred money, I think deferred money is basically free for them. The Dodgers are never going to have a cash flow issue, as long as they don't get somebody like Frank McCourt running the team again. They're not going to have a cash flow issue. The Dodgers' financial machinations have always been about the luxury tax, not about actual money. And so, posting fee, non-factor. Deferred money, okay, if we're paying because right now they're probably going to be at the point where between Mookie and Freddie and Shohei, they're probably going to be paying $30 million a year in deferred money. Who cares? That's zero to the Dodgers. And if you're not a Dodger fan, I get why it sucks. I know people are mad. People are big time mad about the Dodgers, circumventing the CBA rule. No, the rules are there in plain writing, and the Dodgers followed the rules. So yeah, I mean, that's what the Dodgers have done really, really well over the years with all sorts of different things in the CBA and the MLB rulebook and everything. They're good at working within the rules and right at the edge of the rules. And that I'm glad, that's what I want my team's front office doing. And so, yeah, the deferred money is awesome. And so, I don't know if Yamamoto would be interested in deferred money or not, because this is his big payday. But you know what, if you do a $250 million contract and you defer $150 million of it, well, you can pay the dude $40 million in the first year, non-deferred. It still only counts towards, the luxury tax with the deferred values and everything. And so, he can get rich right now, get his full contract over the years, and help them out. So, we'll have to wait and see, but I don't necessarily expect that with Yamamoto, but it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, in all this, it's a potential wrench in all this is Roki Sasaki, that's one of the pitchers that in Japan that the Dodgers were, have already scouted, and we're saying they were maybe waiting for him or thinking about, if he gets posted early or waiting until he gets posted officially. There's been reports that he asked to be posted. All those reports were quickly followed by in the same sentence that it's not likely that he will get posted. But, that is something that's kind of looming there that you never know. The crazier things have happened, I guess. But I don't expect it to happen, but that's just something that's out there.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's not happening this year, but Sasaki may join Yamamoto and Shohei in LA in future years.
Yeah, that's possible. So there was, we talked about some of the hoopla around Ohtani and kind of Friday and Saturday and, everything that led up to it. Bob Nightengale, who, has had different issues on Twitter in the past, specifically, mainly misspellings and things of that nature, sometimes getting wrong information, but he had an article about everything that went on with Ohtani, and wasn't very nice to baseball media in general. So we'll talk about that and see what he had to say. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Thank you for being an everydayer. If you are an everydayer, if you're not an everydayer, all you have to do is listen or watch every single day or as close to it as possible. And we'll appreciate you. We are Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Jeff. So Bob Nightengale put out an article talking about the media and basically saying we need to do better when it comes to the way we report things, the way things are reported. In that same vein, we'll get into this quote right now from him. He said, quote, Shohei Ohtani, baseball's most glorious talent, one that we may never see again, has managed to bring out the absolute worst in us. We baseball writers have disgraced ourselves, becoming an embarrassment to the journalism community. It's time we take a deep breath and check ourselves before we further wreck ourselves. Let's make sure our embarrassing Black Friday never happens again. In the article, he never named any names, but, he basically alluded to the JPs, JP Morosi, JP Hoornstra, who put out wrong information. There's conspiracy theories that they were fed wrong information on purpose from CAA. The Shark Tank guy, Robert, he is a CAA client. So there was talk that was a plant by CAA, the agency, and that the account that first tweeted out the airplane, one airplane going from OC to Toronto, is no longer around and hadn't tweeted in 10 years before that. There's a lot of conspiracies going around. But yeah, Bob didn't care about any of that. He said we need to do better. And I think it's one of those where when you can't trust the top people, verify BBWA guys or whatever, I think, and not that they weren't fed wrong information or anything like that, but it's, right now, and there's a weird space in baseball or, well, not just baseball, but in general media, because most of it goes through Twitter, and Twitter is in a weird space right now because the real check marks have been taken away. Anyone can buy a check mark now. And, basically with the For You tab and everything, like, it gets lost in the shuffle. Anyone can say whatever they want. Nobody gets checked. Nobody gets whatever. And that's basically kind of what Bob's saying is like, we need to check ourselves because nobody else is doing it. And it could go, spiral. I don't know. Obviously, Ohtani was maybe an anomaly, but in general, yeah, Jeff, I don't know what thoughts you have.
Yeah, with the current landscape of social media, people who are looking for news are going to be looking to specific sources who they trust in the past. Jeff Passan is the go-to guy. And so there's Jeff Passan, there's Ken Rosenthal, there's guys like that, John Morosi normally. You have the people who you trust, who are generally reliable. And I think the big concern here was that John Morosi is usually reliable. JP Hornstra, when it comes to Dodgers and Angels, is usually reliable. And so the fact that, and JP Hornstra, he wrote back on Dodgers Nation about what happened. And like, I don't know. I get where he's coming from. I do think, basically what he says is that he was right, and then Shohei Ohtani changed his mind. And it's what he wrote wasn't Ohtani is leaning towards the Dodgers, or it was or towards the Blue Jays. He's made his decision, and when you've made a decision, you don't change your mind. Like, at best, at most, he was leaning towards the Blue Jays if what JP says is accurate. And so, and I think there is that pressure and JP was under extra pressure because he's brand new at Dodgers Nation, just left his actual newspaper job, probably wanting to make a splash for Dodgers Nation and for, they're in a time of transition and everything. I think there was probably pressure there on both sides with Dodgers Nation and with JP to make a splash. And if he had gotten that story and been first on it, it would have been a feather in the cap of Dodgers Nation. And I think that's part of the problem, that these feathers in the caps matter so much, that you being first is such a big deal. It's like, I kind of admire the Braves business model of nothing ever gets leaked. The way we find out about every Braves transaction is when the Braves put out a press release, and I kind of like that. And I don't know why it's that way. I don't know if it would be possible for teams in bigger media markets. Obviously Atlanta's not a small town, but I don't think they have quite the media scrutiny, especially that like the Yankees have, the New York teams, even the Dodgers. There's probably more media focused specifically on them. So I don't know if it would be possible for that, but I feel like in my perfect world, we would find things out like we found out about Shohei. Hey, Shohei Ohtani posted on his Instagram where he's going to sign. And that's how we knew. So there wasn't any question of, okay, is this a legitimate source or not? Like, unless you're saying Shohei Ohtani was hacked on Instagram, then yeah, it's from the horse's mouth. And so I kind of wish things were that way.
Yeah. I don't really care particularly. This one was, like I said, a case that was a different one for sure. I do think, it's a little bit different where, like in the other sports, NFL is, mostly Schefter or Ian Rappaport. And then occasionally, you have a couple people behind them in the second tier. And then you have, sometimes random people or now players, like NFL players will be sources for some of their old teammates or something like that. NBA, you have Shams, you have Woj, and then you have like Chris Haynes and some other people in that second tier. And then you have like the random one-offs. Baseball has that in Passan and Rosenthal, I'd say, are probably the top two. And then there's like the mid tiers of the Morosi's and everybody else. But the thing with baseball and what Bob Nightengale said in this article is that agents or player or team officials or whoever they talk to, whoever the source is, will leak different information of the same transaction to different people. So, let's just say in general, Heyman would get the name of the player signing. And then, Passan would get the numbers, the figures of what the deal is. And then, somebody else like a Joel Sherman or somebody else, whoever will get, details of opt-outs and stuff like that. And, for that, and kind of what Bob said is like, kind of called out that people are in certain agents' pockets or, maybe not getting paid directly, but, getting favorable intel in order for favorable, calling something a great signing when it's one of their clients and something like that. So I do think that's the part that that's hard to tell. And, if we know, like Heyman, the joke with Heyman is that he's, Scott Boris's mouthpiece to a certain extent. And, the fact that we know that is kind of where I have the issue mostly. If it was kind of structured like these other leagues where, all right, for the most part, two guys are going to have like 80% of the news, and then the other 20% is made up of, everybody else, it'd be cool. But yeah, baseball is in a weird spot where that happens. And again, I don't know why I've had a source before, and it happened to be someone that I worked with had a friend that worked in the Dodgers, close enough to the front office. So like back in 16, I think is when I knew about the AJ Ellis and trade beforehand, but I wasn't given the go ahead to tweet about it. So like everyone, there's different sources here and there. We've gotten sources in our DMs from a lunchman at a Korean spot from one of our listeners, and he had some supposed intel. So
didn't you know about another one besides like
I knew Julio was making his debut beforehand, and then there was one other. Oh, I think
was it Logan Forsythe?
No, it was the other second baseman like him from the Twins.
Brian Dozier.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, but yeah, I mean, in general, it'd be ideal if it all came from players or teams. But as long as everyone could just like make a better effort, or if it could like get separated, maybe like the new wave of agents after Boris and all them are out, maybe there'll be a new wave of agents after that, and it'll be a little bit different. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. Enough said on that, probably.
Yeah. So, well, there might be more news for us to talk about tomorrow. If not, there's still a lot for us to talk about in terms of next steps. Tyler Glasnow has been mentioned. Obviously, Dylan Cease has been mentioned. There's still other free agents available on the pitching side. There's still, a right-handed bat that the Dodgers kind of need. There's still more moves to be made. So we'll get into all that and whatever else comes up with the Dodgers. But thank you for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. Make sure to check us out wherever you get podcasting on YouTube, becoming every day, or by listening or watching every day, or as close to it as possible. We're here for you 30 minutes every Monday through Friday. Remember, Locked On has Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles. They're both 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube. One of them covers, obviously, Los Angeles sports. The other one covers all the major stories from around the leagues. Go check them out on YouTube, subscribe, and you can watch it anytime, obviously, because it's 24/7. If you want to find us, we are on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff is on Twitter at Snydog. I'm at Vincent91. You can DM us for any questions, comments, topics, trade ideas, whatever you have. You can also send those via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car, if you're at home, take Smart Advice Play podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.